I love the Klinger Rustic Building Mod. I've used something from this mod on every map playthrough in ASA. The structures look fantastic and are more functional than their vanilla counterparts. Today we will take a look at the Smithy, Forge, Feeding Troughs, and Sap Lanterns. Let's get started. This is what the mod looks like in the mod page. At the time of recording this video, if you go to Browse Mods, over to type in Rustic, these three mods will come up. The one we're looking for is Klinger Additional Rustic Building. We click it. Inside there's a lot of description about the pieces and parts of this mod, but specifically what we are looking for is this one right here. All structures in the mod do not take damage from large creatures. There are quite a few engrams associated with the Klinger Rustic Building Mod. If we go to our engrams and we type in Rustic, we're going to see most everything. What we're going to be looking at today is the Feeding Trough at level 8, the K Rustic Smithy at level 15, the K Rustic Forge at level 15. To find the lantern, we're going to go up and enter Sap, and that will give us the wall Sap Lighting, and that's going to be at level 6. And we're going to start off with the Smithy. Now here I have the vanilla Smithy, and when you look you can see that it has 75 storage slots. When we come over to the K Rustic Smithy, you can see that it has 500 storage slots. That has so much more functionality. In addition, it looks fantastic. The detail on it is amazing. And you can see he's got the trophy for Archathon winner, which is pretty cool. Something else to note is there is a free light source built into the Smithy. So I've boxed ourselves in and we're not getting any natural light. And you can see that there's light coming off the Smithy. It doesn't require any fuel, and it gives you just a little extra something inside of your base. Now I've done some testing with crafting speeds, and it is a little bit faster crafting items in the Rustic Smithy as opposed to the vanilla Smithy. So as a option for your Smithy, it is very nice. Increased storage, free light source, and slightly faster crafting speeds. Next, we're going to take a look at the K Rustic Forge versus the vanilla Forge. So to start off, the K Rustic Forge looks awesome. It is cool with all the detail it's got added to it. I really like that. Let me turn my HUD off here. There we go. I really like the added detail that this forge has. It looks like a real forge. I mean, this one looks like a forge too, but this one just looks so much cooler. Now the vanilla Forge has 24 slots. The K Rustic Forge has 75 slots. That is pretty awesome. So the next thing I want to demonstrate is fuel usage and crafting speeds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split a stack of wood, and I'm going to place that into vanilla, and I'm going to place this one into K Rustic. And we can see that there is 12 minutes and 30 seconds of fuel time in the Rustic Forge. And then we also see there is 25 minutes of fuel time in the Refining Forge. And you might think that it's better to use the vanilla than the Rustic. The difference comes in how quickly the Rustic Forge will craft in that 12 minutes versus how fast the vanilla Forge will craft in 25 minutes. So let's test that. I'm going to split this stack of 300 metal. We're going to place some of that right here into the Rustic Forge, and the other half we're going to place into the vanilla Forge. Now they're both fueled up, they're both loaded with metal, and I'm going to light the fire, and we're going to have a race to see who can smelt the most the fastest. Alright, so we now have our first metal ingot in the vanilla Forge. We'll go over to the Rustic Forge, and we've got 10 ingots already. Now it's 11. Now it's 12. 13. So on and so on. You can see it crafts so much faster. We've got 15 ingots in the Rustic, and we've only got 2 in the vanilla. Can we get a third? Yeah, we're not even getting a third yet. So the fact that this has less fuel time is actually a good thing because of how fast it fuels. What it allows you to do is get your charcoal faster because its fuel time burns faster. Whereas over here, we're barely getting metal and we're barely getting charcoal. So the K Rustic Forge looks better, crafts faster, and returns your charcoal faster. And that's pretty cool. Next, we're going to go over the feeding troughs. Now, the K-Rustic mod has 4 variations of feeding troughs. So here we have a vanilla feeding trough. Now I've gone in and I've placed some items in here. The spoil timers on here were exactly the same as the spoil timers in all these other variations that I've placed here. I actually pulled them out of a pie jack, which acts like a refrigerator. So they all had the same exact starting spoil timer. So when you go to use a variation of a K-Rustic feeding trough, what you do is you go to place the feeding trough. And then if you look at the above the hotbar, you can hit square and cycle through the different types of feeding troughs. There is a general feeding trough. There is a meat only feeding trough. There is a berry only feeding trough. Then there is a fish only feeding trough. And you might say, what's the difference? Why would I want to use one over the other? And we'll show that now. The vanilla feeding trough, we're going to start with fish. And in that, this spoil timer is 57 minutes and 30 something seconds. We're going to go over to the fish feeding trough and look, and it has a spoil timer of 7 hours and 58 minutes as compared to 57 minutes. Now, the general feeding trough has fish in it as well, but its spoil timer is 2 hours and 57 minutes. So what happens is you can place only fish in the fish feeding trough. You can place everything in the general feeding trough, just like you can with the vanilla feeding trough. The difference is the spoil timers increase with each specialized feeding trough. So we'll go back to vanilla. We're going to look at regular meat, and it's 19 minutes. The general feeding trough, it started with the same spoil timer, and it's 1 hour and 19 minutes. Then we're going to come over here to the K-Rustic feeding trough, and this one has 3 hours and 49 minutes. We're going to come back to the vanilla feeding trough. Our stack of berries, 20 minutes. Our general feeding trough, that same start time, is now 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then we'll go over to the berry feeding trough variation, and it has 3 hours and 50 minutes. Next, let's take a look at the size of the feeding trough storage. This has 60 slots of storage in it. These variations each have 150, 150, 150, and 150. So the K-Rustic feeding trough has 150 regardless of what variation you use. The last thing we want to do is we want to take a look at it. Now, this right here, it doesn't look that great. I mean, let's be honest, it's just like Dookie Brown. You come over here to the general and it's kind of the same. It's almost the same kind of model. Then when you get to the variations, look at the awesome detail you have. This is the meat. This is the berry and veggie. And this is the fish. That is pretty cool. And that adds a nice aesthetic to your base. Not to mention, just the outside of it looks so much better than the vanilla feeding trough. So now we have to show ranges of the feeding troughs to get an idea of what the variations of the size is. Let's go into show feeding range, and I want to make sure that we are at the highest range possible. And so we are at the highest range possible. We can't go any higher. Let me take this door down. There we go. Now, this is the standard range for a feeding trough, the vanilla feeding trough. You can see by the green outline there. Next, we're going to show the general feeding trough. And we're going to put it on its max range. Go away. Now, let's fly up in the air. All right, I think we're probably high enough now. So as we look down, we can see that the small green ring in the center is the vanilla feeding trough. The large green ring around the outside is going to be the K-Rustic feeding trough. That is going to be large enough to cover almost any base size you're going to be using. Now for testing purposes, let's just go ahead and test one of the specialized feeding troughs to see if there's any difference in range. It's going to be the same. You can see here at the bottom that its current range is 10,000. and this is current range 10,000. So the range on the K Rustic Feeding Trough, regardless if you use the general or the specialized ones, are so much better than the vanilla feeding trough. The spoil timers are so much longer than the vanilla feeding trough, and let's be honest, it just looks better. Now, the last thing that I want to look at here is a structure that's inside the K Rustic Building Mod, and it's the Sap Lantern, and there's two variations of it. And we're going to go ahead and pick this one up, and then we're going to place it down. Now, we have one that goes on a table or a floor, and then if you hit square, you've got a wall one. Notice I can't put this one on the ground at all, but then it'll allow me to place it on the wall. So the one that I have on the wall is the second variation. We're going to go back to the first variation, and we're going to place it down right here. Now, it says it runs off of sap. So we're going to go over and we're going to look, and there's no sap in there. And we're going to turn it on, and it lights up. Now, I have to be honest, I've used this lantern for, I don't know, since I started playing ASA. And I've always put the sap in first and turned it on. I've never tried running it with no fuel in it. It even states no fuel. This one states no fuel. There's no fuel in it, and they're running. It was all the way up until now, when I was making this video describing how to use this, that I learned that you don't need to put any sap in it to make it work. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intended. I'll say this, I filled up the lanterns on my playthroughs with sap and noticed that it was rarely burning through any of the sap. I never had to refill it, and it's probably because it's a little bit bugged and it's not working correctly. I would assume it's the same as this. Whenever you place down the Smithy, it will light up and you never have to refuel it. And I'm assuming it's the same model here, except you have the option to turn it on, turn it off, turn it back on, and you basically have a free light source. Now, I don't know about you, some people think that that's kind of cheaty, but I actually like that. Going out and having a harvest to do wall torches and standing torches so that you can have light in your base, it's a time waster. And I love it when mods save me time. It's one of the reasons why I use mods. So for lighting, I kind of like this. Now, the one thing I will state is I've tried to paint these to change it from just a standard yellow glow, and it comes out a little weird. You can paint it just like you can a torch, but it's a little odd in how you get your colors to change. So, color at your own risk. But for a light source, it's fantastic. On Aberration, I use these a ton because, let's be honest, that map is dark. I have really enjoyed this mod. There are so many features that save time, add functionality, and increase productivity. I've done deep dives on other pieces of this mod. I'll link that playlist at the end of the video so you can see those other structures. If you learned something useful, then give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it. And we will see you in the next one.